What's going on, everybody? It is Wednesday, and you know what that means. It's Q and Opinion Day. Now, the questions that you continue to roll in, I love them. I don't just love them because I love sharing my thoughts on things like I think a lot of us do, but I also love them because it lets me know kind of how people tick and what certain things people are interested in. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's something that I hadn't really thought about, but yeah, that is an interesting topic. Now, if you are a person who has never asked a question, I would encourage you to ask a question. I think it's fun to hear from, different screen names and people that I've never met before, heard before, or submitted a question before. So don't hesitate to do that. As always, I love hearing all types of questions. Now, this week, a really, really wide variety. I wouldn't say that there's one question where I feel like I'm kind of put on the spot a little bit. It's kind of going to be a tough one to answer for me, but I'll, as always, give you my personal opinion on that topic. But before we do that, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to my buddy Gary up in Canada. He sent me a couple of really cool things. He sent me this statue of the goat. I mean, come on, how awesome is that? A Roger Clemens statue? I mean, yeah, as a kid, I kind of thought someday I might put a Roger Clemens statue in my house. Well, now I have one. He also sent me this cool book. He said he had just finished it. So I'm excited to read over that. Looks interesting for sure. Kind of goes through cards from 48 to 55, which is a sweet spot of some of my favorite sets. And then he also sent me a couple of cards, but also this. A 40th anniversary Sports Illustrated, all the way back to that very first one. So thank you so much, Gary. Those were super thoughtful. Now, a couple of big things are coming up here. I mentioned on Monday, I've got an interview next week for Off Topic with me and my buddy Darren of Return to Collecting, where we're going to be having a conversation with Dr. Beckett. That is scheduled for next Tuesday. And if you have any questions that you are interested in asking him, my Monday video 2 days ago, the question of the week is, what would you ask Dr. Beckett? Now, I'm thinking about, picking 2 or 3 of those questions to include in our conversation with him. I know Darren has some questions for him. I have some questions for him. I mean, this is a guy who's on the Mount Rushmore of card collecting. And to be able to have him on the channel is a huge compliment that he'd be willing to spend the time to do that with me. So Darren and I are super excited. So check out that Monday video. If you have a question for him, post that in Monday's video. If you have a question for an upcoming episode with me, then please take a second to ask that in this video in the comments below. Now, I also am rapidly approaching my 2-year anniversary. That will happen next week. And I have what I think is a really fun announcement to make as part of the 2-year anniversary. Now, any of you that know me know by now, I have gone 2 years without missing a single week. I've gone 2 years where every single week I've had a minimum of 2 videos per week for 2 straight years. Now, that 2-year mark is important to me for a few reasons, and I'll talk about that on that upcoming video. That will have the big announcement, or at least I think it's a big announcement, a super fun announcement that I'll be sharing with you. And so that will probably be coming sometime early next week as well. So kind of busy. We got a few things going on. I've got another big interview coming up, which you'll want to keep your eye out for. We haven't recorded it yet. We haven't set a date yet, but it's one that I'm really, really excited for. So a lot going on this month here in October, and I look forward to sharing all of that with you. But enough of me. Talking about my stuff, let's go ahead and look at the first question you had for me right here. What baseball card would you say is the face of the hobby? Many collectors would say the T206 Wagner, but I think it's the 52 Mickey Mantle. When I was a kid, born in 1982, the card that was above all other cards was the 52 Mantle, in my opinion. I knew I would never be able to afford the Wagner, but I thought there might be a chance that one day I might be able to own a Mantle. It still hasn't happened. I see the Mantle in more advertisements than the Wagner. Heck, it was on a huge banner on the side of the convention center at this year's National in Cleveland. I look forward to hearing your thoughts. Also, if you would think another card would be the face of the hobby, I'd love to hear that as well. All right. I think this is a fairly tough question. It might seem easy, and I obviously have a quick response, a quick answer, but I can't be short-winded. I have to kind of go beyond that. Now, when I was a kid, the cards were the Honus Wagner, the T206 Honus Wagner, and the 52 Mantle, the two that you mentioned. And I think that those are the quick knee-jerk reactions to the face of the hobby. And I do think that when I was a kid and when I was collecting in the late 80s is when I started, mid to late 80s, that those would have been the two cards. And this is when PSA started up. This is when grading started up. And the amount of notoriety around Wayne Gretzky at the time, and the fact that, wait, Greg, are you talking about Wayne Gretzky? That was an odd transition. No, it's not an odd transition. You'll remember that Wayne Gretzky was a partner in buying that Honus Wagner card. And this is right as hockey was really exploding in the United States. Gretzky was playing for the Kings down in Los Angeles, and he was sort of like finishing up his career, and there was a big hockey movement in the United States at that time. And Gretzky, who was obviously well known, bought that Honus Wagner, and that made it like a headline. Like, it was a crazy amount of money at the time. Now it seems like an incredible deal, but it was an incredible amount of money at the time. And that put that card at the forefront. That put that card in front of everybody's faces on TV and in magazines and stuff. And since then, we all kind of know of the Honus Wagner, but if you didn't grow up at that time during that big famous sale, that was really the height of, that's right, the serial number on that Honus Wagner is like 1, right? Like 00001. The one that has since been under oath in court proven to be or admitted to be trimmed. And there are a few Wagners out there that caught some attention, and a lot of that caught attention then. And so at the time, I think because of the amount of tension swirling around that card, it kind of was the face of the hobby because it was in front of a lot of us. But right now, the card that gets the attention is the most expensive card, and the big sales, and is on ESPN, and is on the TV, has been the 52 Mantle. A few Mantles have sold recently in the millions, and those have been pretty big deals. Now, I know a couple of the Ruth cards have sold for a lot as well, but the thing about those Ruth cards is, it doesn't seem, because Ruth has a few cards that are kind of in that area, it's not like, well, what's the most famous Ruth card? Now, some people would argue which it is. But to me, the Mantle is the Mantle. And that's the one that is kind of makes news for the major sales. So my immediate reaction would be the 52 Mantle for right now. I do think that 30 years ago, it was the Honus Wagner, and there was a lot of attention for the Mantle. I remember seeing the 52 Mantle as a kid, but I also remember seeing the Honus Wagner as a kid. I've seen several Honus Wagners, and I've seen a lot of the 52 Mantle. The 52 Mantle is much, obviously, there are lots of copies of that out there. But so I'd say the 52 Mantle, but to me, when you say, what is the face of the hobby? It's what if you had 100 people that are involved in cards saw the card and knew what the card was. That's kind of the face of the hobby. What's the most recognizable? What's the most iconic? I think you can make an argument, and I know get your Rotten Tomatoes ready to throw at the screen, but I think you could make the argument for the 89 Upper Deck Ken Griffey Jr. I mean, there are a lot of people in the hobby that know that card. Now, are there more people that know the 89 Upper Deck Ken Griffey Jr. than the 52 Mantle? I think maybe so. I think a lot of the younger generation, the newer to collectors, the ultra modern collectors, I think more of them would know of the 89 Upper Deck Griffey than would know of the 52 Mantle. I think both of those two, I think, are at the very, very top of the list. So I think from a pre-war standpoint, the clear choice is the Wagner. From the golden era age, I think it's clearly the 52 Mantle. I think of the more quote-unquote modern-ish cards, not vintage cards, it's the Ken Griffey Jr. Upper Deck. My question is more, other than those three, what is it? Because to me, those three are clearing away the top three. So, I mean, just out of curiosity, what do you all think that it is if you exclude those three? To me, that next tier of the face of the hobby, some people would say the Mike Trout rookie. I mean, and a lot of us vintage collectors are like, oh my gosh, did he just say that? Yeah, I just said that because I think that a lot of people would recognize that card. I also think the 54 Hank Aaron rookie is really, really high on the list. So you got the 54 Hank Aaron rookie, you've got the Mike Trout rookie. You might even make an argument, and again, I'm going to start ducking because of the tomatoes that are going to come whirling at the screen. But to a certain extent, I think the 1980 Rickey Henderson rookie card is a very popular and recognizable card. So I don't know. Tell me in the comments below. Let's eliminate, just for a second, just for fun, eliminate the Wagner, eliminate the 52 Mantle, eliminate the Ken Griffey Jr. What's the face of the hobby of everything else? I would probably go number one with the Hank Aaron. But if I were to ask anybody under 20, they would probably all say the Mike Trout, I would think. If you were to ask somebody my age, in their 40s, I think that maybe some might say the Rickey Henderson. I don't know. Let me know what you think, because I think it's an interesting question. But that's my take. For now, it's 1A and 1B are the 52 Topps Mickey Mantle and the 89 Upper Deck Ken Griffey Jr. What do you think of the 1983 to 85 Star basketball cards? This is the question I can't possibly give an answer that's going to be popular. Not that I try to give answers that are popular, but some group is going to be upset regardless of how I answer this. This is a very polarizing topic. Whenever I talk about things PSA is doing well, that's polarizing. Things PSA is doing poorly, that's polarizing. SGC, again, similar, but certain cards like a controversial card like the Jordan Star cards. And why is it? Why are those so polarizing? See, what I try really, really hard to do, and I think that I'm good at, is I know that everybody tends to be biased towards what they have their investment in. And if you want to not call it an investment, they've got their funds in. You know, if you're a person who's PSA only and somebody starts talking a little bit negatively about PSA or exposing some things about PSA, that's going to upset the people who have their collection in PSA. If you start saying things positive about SGC, a lot of the PSA people will be mad because they don't want PSA to be super legitimate. I try really hard to be independent between those. I own some, I would say at this point, my collection is maybe 60% PSA, 40% SGC, but I've also considered crossing over some of my pre-war cards from PSA to SGC just so they're uniform. And I know that there are people out there that are just like, that's a dumb idea. And maybe it is, but I like the looks of the cards in SGC. But this isn't about SGC and PSA. This is about a polarizing topic with basketball cards. I don't honestly know a lot of the history about this, but here is my immediate take on this particular topic. So Dr. Beckett, who I listened to his podcast, he went on like a 3 or 4 part series about a month ago where he had some people that were very pro the Jordan Star rookie card, and he's kind of not. And they kind of debated back and forth. And I thought both made some really good points about the pros and cons of the card. Now, for me, there's a few things. Now, this brings us to a whole nother topic, which I could go down a huge rabbit hole on, which is what is a rookie card? You know, a lot of us think, well, a rookie card is the first card that the person shows up on. And then there are other people who say that there are rules for what is a rookie card. Like a rookie, for it to be a rookie card, it has to be a mass-produced card. It has to be released in the United States. It has to be in packs. It has to be random. It has to be, you know, distributed from coast to coast. And so it kind of then depends on, well, where does this fall? Now, Star wasn't like universally widely distributed. It was distributed in a lot of areas, but it wasn't available at every local card shop at the time. They came in team sets. They didn't come in packs. So it's not like you would open a pack and you could get the Jordan Star card. Now, I don't know if it's his rookie card. I mean, I kind of feel like the Jordan Star card is a rookie card, but I also feel like the 86 Fleer is a rookie card. I kind of feel like it's like the 84 Fleer Clemens is his rookie card, but so is the 85 Fleer Clemens. Like one is sort of like an extended rookie card and one is a rookie. I just think that they're both rookie cards. If I had to have one, I think the iconic nature of the 86 Fleer Jordan is the card that I would be more interested in having. I think that the fact that PSA didn't grade the Star cards for a long, long time, and now they are, and then once they did, then the prices shot up. Like, why did the price shoot up so much as soon as PSA started grading it? I mean, does PSA really have that much power that if they don't grade something, we think of it as not legit, but then if they grade it, it is legit, and then they can change their mind on whether it's legit or not? Like that, it seems to me like the collecting community should be the ones deciding what's legit and what's not a grading company. Now, the other thing is, if you look back at the very first basketball Beckett, so again, Dr. Beckett is kind of anti the Star cards. He doesn't really consider that, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he doesn't really consider it to be a legit rookie card, I guess, is the easiest way to summarize it. In the first basketball Beckett, the one with Jordan on the cover, in that Beckett, it has the Star card as a higher price than the 86 Fleer. So, and again, he was a statistician. He was a college professor statistician. And so he just reported the data. And even back then, the data was that the Star card was more expensive. So this is when PSA wasn't really involved. So the market at the time, the card community at the time, leaned toward the Jordan Star as the more premium card. And then later, the Fleer card got popular. And then now when PSA started grading, then the Star card became popular again. Here's kind of my issue, and this is just anecdotal, with the star, because there's been all these rumors about them printing them and who's printing them and the legitimacy of the printing of them and how if they're easy to duplicate. Here's all I know is when I was a kid, going to card shows up and down the west coast of the United States in California, I would go to card shows and I would see that a lot of shows would have one, maybe two dealers that just had piles and piles and piles of the star cards. I remember being at a little tiny card show at a Holiday Inn hotel in Fairfield, California. And there was a dealer there that showed up every time they had a show. And it was about every 3 or 4 months that they had a show. And I mean, in his case, he had the case where like the glass stood up like this, and he'd have piles this high. He'd have piles 18 inches high of star cards, and they were just coming out of his ears. And the reason I remember this is because I, at the time, was collecting Larry Bird cards. Was one of the player runs that I was doing. And I mean, there were several Larry Bird cards from Star. And I bought one of them because I was like, well, I'm not going to buy all. There's a bunch of them. I'll just buy one of them so I have one of the Star cards. And the card wasn't really, it wasn't really looked at and revered. It was just sort of like, oh yeah, those are those cards over there. And, but I just remember how many that guy had. And so I permanently have in my brain this thing of, that was weird. That was weird that he had that many. Like, and people weren't like lined up at his table. So I don't know. I mean, ultimately, here's what I do know. What I do know is the market will dictate what is in demand and what is not in demand, not what Greg thinks. So if people feel like the preferred card is the Star Jordan, then the Star Jordan's value will get high and it will stay high. And if the collecting community decides that it shouldn't be that way, then it will correct. I don't have a crystal ball on predicting how that's going to play out. I know that if the two cards were sitting side by side, and I don't know even what they necessarily sell for in different grades, I would really like to have an 86 Fleer Jordan. I would like to have one of those in my collection someday. I personally am not all that interested in needing a Star Jordan. So from my perspective, I'd rather have the Fleer one. What is his rookie card? I think there's a strong argument that it's the Star. What is the preferred one? It seems at the moment that people prefer the Star. But for me, I would personally rather have the Fleer. Hey, Greg, here's a question for you. With the proliferation of jersey bat memorabilia cards being produced in the last 30 years, do you think there will come a point when there will be a shortage of material to put in the cards? Maybe not so much with modern players, but with older, long-retired players. At what point do they keep cutting up Babe Ruth bats or Willie Mays jerseys? Will there come a time when they decide to stop because the supply just runs low? Will this harm the legacy of the historical aspect of having those actual pieces of history? Love the channel. Best, Ed. All right. Historical artifacts have a set, there's a finite number of them. There's only so many historical artifacts, right? There's only so many T206 Honus Wagners, a card we were talking about earlier. We're not going to make more of them. So every time something gets lost or destroyed, there's one less. And when there's one less, it makes them even more rare. Now, every time Fanatics or Upper Deck or whoever takes an old Ruth bat and cuts it up and puts it into cards, there are fewer Ruth bats out there. Will we ever run out? I don't think they'll run out because I think as they become rarer, because some have been cut up, and some may get destroyed in museums or fires or something, that I think that they'll get priced out. I mean, Fanatics is in this whole thing to make money. They're not going to buy $1 million bat and cut it up unless they're going to make $1,001 or more, right? Probably they're not going to do it unless they double their money. So they're not going to buy $1 million bat unless it's going to net them $2 million. So there is going to come a point, I don't think that we'll run out of jerseys. I don't think it'll be like, oh, there goes the last Willie Mays game used jersey. It got cut up by Fanatics. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that there will just get to the point where there are so few available that the price of them makes it where it's not cost effective for Fanatics or whatever company to continue to buy them and put them into cards. And I think that's one of the reasons that they've gone to some other options like, autographs of living legends and things like that, because it's a little bit more affordable. Now, as far as those cards are concerned, one of the, again, I could go down a rabbit hole, but I'm not a huge fan of taking a historical artifact and cutting it up so that more people can own a piece. It's like fractional ownership, but in the process, the thing got destroyed. I mean, I don't think they should take the Mona Lisa and cut it up into little pieces and then put it into some sort of card. And people say, I own a part of the Mona Lisa. I mean, with the Berlin Wall, which they were tearing down anyway, people were buying pieces of the Berlin Wall, allegedly. That's one thing. But I don't think we should be destroying historical artifacts. I like preserving history. I don't like destroying history. So I'm not really in favor of that to begin with. The other issue that I kind of have with at least bat cards, and then there are some of those like sweet spot cards where there are like the sweet spot off of a leather ball is like cut out and put into a card, is some of those items were living organisms. And I mean, that ball was a piece of leather, right? And that piece of leather, it expands and contracts with light, with heat, with moisture. And so I've been at card shows and I've seen like a sweet spot autograph, card cutout thing. And like the piece of leather has shrunk and it looks terrible. It doesn't fit in the card right anymore. I think it was in the late 90s, might have been the early 2000s. Upper Deck made a set called Yankee Legends. And the whole set were just different Yankee cards of Yankee legendary players. And there were a bunch of insert cards in there. And I remember my brother was really into those. I was in college, and I wasn't collecting a lot of cards during college. I got in this kick for a while in college where I was kind of collecting some of the 81 and 82 golf sets, Donruss golf sets. But what happened was my brother bought a couple of those boxes. Now, keep in mind, my brother's the one that's always had great luck with opening packs. And I have the world's worst luck with opening packs. And he opened a box or two of those, and he pulled out a relic card of a Babe Ruth bat. And what they did is they didn't just cut up the bat and give you like a little square or rectangle of the bat. They laser cut the card into the Yankee logo, the emblem, the NY, like they have on the hat. And when they laser cut it, this is wood. And wood it's porous. And it expands and it contracts and it gets brittle. And the way that they cut it to make it on the logo made it where some of the sections were super, super thin, like really thin. And my brother pulled a pack with a Babe Ruth bat relic in it. And it was one of the ones that were cut out like that. And I want to say, my mind, he has it still, but I want to say that it cracked and at one of the little spots. So now we've taken this bat that Babe Ruth used. We cut it into pieces. We laser cut it out to make it look cool. And in the process of doing that, just like these cut autos where they cut out leather squares of autographed balls of deceased Hall of Famers, it kind of doesn't work. Like the ball needs to stay as the ball and the bat needs to stay as the bat. So I'm not a huge fan of this whole thing to begin with. But will I think we'll run out? I don't think we'll run out. I think the card companies will get priced out because it will get to the point where it's no longer cost effective. Hi, Greg. Thank you for entertaining me during my lunch breaks at work. Also, I have a question. Recently, the Reds signed Terry Francona as their new manager. He has an impressive managerial record from his time with Boston, ending the curse, and in Cleveland, where he guided them to the World Series. If he has major success in Cincinnati, I believe it is possible for him to make the Hall of Fame. Because of this, I began looking into his rookie cards. What are your thoughts about collecting Hall of Fame manager rookie cards, especially of guys that didn't have much success as players? Do you have any in your collection? Like the 59 Sparky Anderson, the 64 Tony La Russa, or the 86 Jim Leland? Just curious about your thoughts. Thanks again and have a great day. This is an interesting one. My immediate knee-jerk reaction when I first read this question was no. I don't think that manager cards are going to have a lot of value. Their playing day cards of when they were players before they got into the Hall of Fame as managers. Like, I don't think that an 87 Topps Earl Weaver card has a lot of upside to it. So I don't know why people would necessarily buy that. But then I took a step back and I said, wait a second. I own some manager cards. What am I talking about? So apparently there is some demand. So for example, Miller Huggins. Miller Huggins was the manager of the Yankees during a great run of theirs. He was the first person to be enshrined in Monument Park in Yankee Stadium. Miller Huggins was. And I own a Miller Huggins card for that reason. Well, for that reason, and because I'm trying to collect at least one card of every Hall of Famer in the T206 set. And then 6 months ago, or I guess 10 months ago, at Christmas last year, I gave my brother a Joe Torre rookie card. And Joe Torre, not because Joe Torre was a great player, but because he was a legendary Yankee manager during their run in the late 90s and early 2000s. And so I'm like, and I've owned Casey Stengel cards. So my immediate reaction was like, no, what would anybody want cards of managers for? And then I'm like, wait a second, I have cards of managers, and I've had cards of managers, and I buy gifts for my brother of cards of managers. So yeah, I think that because we've gone largely away from set collecting, not everybody, but the more popular thing now is player runs and Hall of Fame runs and decade Hall of Famer runs, that people want to they're completionists, right? And they want to have all the Hall of Famers from a decade. They want to have all the Hall of Famers from a set. So I think it makes sense that, yeah, I think that there is going to potentially be long-term demand because people like collecting Hall of Famers, and managers are Hall of Famers too. And I, for one, have some Hall of Famer manager cards, so I don't know why other people wouldn't also. And maybe I'm the only one, but Yeah, I think that there's definitely some potential. I don't think I would run out and spend all my money on manager cards, but I think that anybody who's in the Hall of Fame will continue to have a decent amount of demand, including managers. Hey, Greg, happy Wednesday. What are your thoughts on how we collectively can do a better job to safeguard the hobby and hold the bad actors accountable? It seems the number of card show thefts that have been on the rise in the past year or two, and your friend and card dealer for Ash was sadly one of the victims of a major crime. How much responsibility does the show venue have when it comes to security, or is it also on the dealers, not just Ash, but in general, to be aware of the surroundings too? When it comes to big money cards, would you feel comfortable selling at a card show knowing you could potentially be robbed or scammed? Though eBay also has their fair share of people who commit fraud and scam buyers and sellers also. So would you turn to the reputable auction houses and put your trust in them? Ideally, buying and selling to and from someone you know and trust, it seems to be the best of the situations, but that is not always feasible. Thanks, Greg. All right. I love this question. Andrew asks a lot of great questions, and he actually asked this question last week, and I was like, I think I'm going to have this one jump the line and go straight to this week because I think it's a really interesting one. You know, how can we safeguard the hobby? There are definitely people out there who are, less than honest and less than forthcoming. And because of that, as a result, it kind of puts a sour taste in the mouths of some collectors. And people, it doesn't take a ton of people to have bad experiences for that to drive somebody out of the hobby. So one of the things we want to try to ensure is that people have positive experiences in the hobby. That's one of the issues I personally have with some of these channels, like endorsing certain cards as being a good investment or being something, anytime you call a card an investment, now a card might change in value up and down, but I wouldn't be buying a lot of cards as investments. That's just me. And one of the reasons that I have a little bit of an issue with some of these channels that call a card an investment and they say, I think this card's a great investment right now, and then they're like wrong time and time again, is then people get burned because they trusted you, and then they get burned, and then when you get burned, you leave the hobby. That's one of the issues I have with breaks. In a break, if there's 20 people in a break, 1 or 2 will do really well. 18 or 19 don't. 18 or 19 get hosed. And as a result, you get burned enough times, you leave the hobby. So I think it's important that we're all protecting each other because that is what ensures that the hobby continues to thrive. What can we do to safeguard it? Could we do things like put up more cameras? I had never seen cameras at a card show before the National this year. Now, I'm not saying they weren't around, but I had never seen cameras. At the end of each aisle, there were like high-def cameras up, just pointing out. I don't know if other people noticed them, but they were there. And I'm sure that, like I said, there were cameras at other shows I'd been to. I just hadn't noticed them. After the big theft in Dallas, I reached out to a local promoter in Northern California, and I said, are you going to do anything differently? And he said, well, right now I have a police officer that stands at the entrance of the card show. And then I have a couple of undercover police officers that I hire that walk around as like secret shoppers, basically, and keep an eye on things. And we do catch people. And I think those are good things. But ultimately, I think that it's not about requiring like a law enforcement or requiring some sort of security to protect the hobby. What we need to be doing is helping each other. If there is somebody at one of the local shows, I think it was the Philly show, a dealer had a card get stolen because he got he got distracted by somebody. They opened the case and took the card and took off. You can't tell me that somebody didn't see that happen. You can't tell me that no other, person at the show didn't see that take place. We have to be looking out for each other. It's like your neighborhood. If I saw someone breaking into my neighbor's house across the street, I think that I would let my neighbors know and we would confront the person. I think that I would take video of it. I would try to help catch the person. You look out for each other. One of my friends in the hobby lives on an island. You probably know who it is. And he lives on an island and he says, we have no theft on this island. And I go, what do you mean you have no theft? He goes, we have no theft. Because if anybody is caught, it's such a small island. If anybody is caught, they put their face on the local news and that person is banished from the island. They are completely disowned and shunned and they have to move. So nobody commits crime because if you commit crime, everybody else turns on you. And that's what a community is. And the card community, in order to protect itself, in order to protect the whole of the community, we have to be looking out for each other. If we see people that are doing scams, we need to call it out. If we see people that have dishonest listings, we should be calling it out. If we're seeing crimes take place at card shows, if we're seeing people doing shady things, then we should be letting each other know. See, the police can't be everywhere. Security can't be everywhere. The crimes that are happening in a lot of places are preventable if people just spoke up and looked out for each other. But it feels like we live in this place now where we just go, not my problem. And I don't think that that's how you safeguard things. So we could put cameras on every square inch of things. Even that Dallas show theft, there were cameras that caught it. But a criminal is going to find a way to, even if there are cameras, to be able to disguise themselves. They're going to be able to do things to make it hard for them to get caught. But if we all just kind of look out for each other, and I guess that's my thing, is how do we safeguard the hobby? We act like a community. Like I remember as a kid, as like a 6-year-old, like our street decided they were going to do some sort of neighborhood watch thing. Some of you probably had that in your neighborhood. And I remember the whole street would meet. They would have meetings once a quarter or once a month. And all the adults would kind of talk about, hey, what have you been seeing? What can we do to prevent this and that? And I remember there was this thing on the street where there was this light post. And somebody put this sign, they mounted this sign up to the light post. And it said this is a neighborhood watch street. And it was the whole street came out and watched them put that up. And it was everyone was happy. It was a street event. And it was yeah, we here on this street, we look out for each other. And that's not just something about protecting the card community. That's about connecting and protecting every community that we're a part of. When we live in a town, if we live on a street, just even in our country, if nobody is willing to stand up and look out for others, then we're all doomed. We're all doomed because in the end, there are bad people that are going to do bad things. And if we don't, as a group, as a collective, show that actually, no, the numbers are this, we outnumber you, you're not going to do that here. That's the only thing that can truly protect the community. Now, I know there are some channels out there in the YouTube world that get a little bit of crap for being negative and being watchdogs, you know? Dan the Card Man. Dan the Card Man tries to call out people that are doing shady stuff. I don't know if you watch Dan the Card Man, but that's basically what his channel is he calls out when people are doing something kind of shady. You know, sports card radio. I know they're polarizing. I know they're vulgar. I find them entertaining, but they're exposing a lot of breakers that are doing stuff, a lot of people that are doing shady stuff. A lot of their content revolves around actually looking out for the average collector. To be totally honest, that really is at the root of it, what they're doing. And I actually think that we need channels to be doing stuff like that. We need people in the community to be doing stuff like that. If you're at a card show and you see somebody doing something, you need to help get the rest of the people around to be aware of it. Hey, what are you doing? As he's reaching into someone's case. Say it loud so other people hear and turn it. If we are the gatekeepers, if we are the security, if we are a community, then that's what actually needs to happen. Not put up more cameras, not have a couple of more security guards, but we need to police it ourselves. That's what a community does. And this is the card community. I love these questions this week. If you have a question for an upcoming episode, please don't hesitate to down below in the comments, simply type your question.